Hey guys, welcome to our 10 episode deep dive of the Gulf Shores, Alabama market. I'm your host, Avery Carl, and I wanted to let you know really quick before we get started that we do have some supplemental materials for you to go along with this podcast on our website, theshorttermshop.com. So what we have there is the current purchase prices in this market. So you can set yourself up a search, look at properties, do all that fun real estate stuff, kind of like Zillow. We've got it on our website, and you can check out exactly how much it costs to buy a condo or single family home or townhouse in the Gulf Shores market right now. Also, to go along with that, we have the AirDNA data, thanks to our friends over at AirDNA, for this market for the past few years. So you can compare purchase prices versus the AirDNA data and kind of do some analysis there. We've also got a really cool calculator on the website that I built around short-term rental investing to go along with all these things. Or if you know you want to buy in Gulf Shores and you're ready to start talking to an agent, you can reach out to us at agents@theshorttermshop.com and we'll get you connected with our agent in Gulf Shores. And last but not least, if you just really like us and you want to hang out with us more, we'd love to see more of you. So there's a few ways you can do that. You can join our Facebook group. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, same title as my book. It's a community of over 60,000 investors sharing best practices and just kind of being friends with each other. It's pretty cool. Or if you want to talk to us in person, you can do that every Thursday. You can sign up at strquestions.com. We have a 1 hour lunch hour, just office hours, where you can ask us anything you want about short-term rental investing. So we appreciate you guys listening, and please reach out to us with any questions. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Join us in our community on Facebook as well. And I guess we'll get to the episode now. Thanks, guys. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Short Term Show special episode series on the Gulf Shores market. We have a few familiar faces to introduce to. We're talking about expenses today. So on the previous episode, we talked about income and numbers. Today, we're going to talk about the other piece of that puzzle, the expenses. So first, we will introduce Bill Faith. You guys all know who that is, but Bill, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bill. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Bill. I've been invested in the Gulf Shores market. Really started in Fort Morgan in 2015. Made some migration of my assets down to the West Beach area when the airport was announced quite a few years ago, and have done some new construction. My number one property in my portfolio is located in Gulf Shores. So I own one in Fort Morgan, one in Gulf Shores today, and then I actually co-host 8 additional properties in the market.
All right. Tim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Tim Grillo. I own in Gulf Shores and in the Smokies. So in Gulf Shores, we have 2 condos that are on the West Beach end of town. So,
all right. Thanks, Tim. Ethan?
Yep, Ethan McCarty. I have a duplex in Fort Morgan. Been down there a couple of years.
Thanks, Ethan. And Jonathan?
Hey, everybody. Jonathan with the Short-Term Shop in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach and Fort Morgan. And I own an RV park and some short-term rentals in the Fort Morgan area.
Lots of Fort Morganers. All right.
Cheap.
So, yeah, it is quieter down there. I like the quiet of Fort Morgan compared to right in the middle of Gulf Shores. But if you'd asked me when I was 21, I might have had a different answer. So let's talk about expenses. So you got a few just basic generic expenses that we'll go through first, like, your electric, your water bill, things like that. So what do you guys see for that? We don't need specific numbers. We just need to know if anything is wildly out of line with, a general expectation.
no, I think really I've seen it's pretty typical of around the country for your utilities expenses. Obviously, insurance is one that's going to be, maybe jump the gun there, but insurance is going to be a little more than just, middle America because you are on a beach market. So, but as far as general utilities, I've seen it's pretty normal.
Agreed. Tim, you brought up the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah, right out of the gate. Yeah, Avery loves it when I do that.
Insurance and taxes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that right away.
Yeah, let's dive right into it. So, I mean, if everything else is, pretty normal, one thing I want to ask about the very normal expenses before we get into the abnormal expenses, is it typical to have gas in this market, or is everything electric?
It depends on where you are. A lot of places in Fort Morgan won't have gas as even an option. So a lot of the Fort Morgan properties won't have gas. In West Beach, you do see some gas in Orange Beach. Another thing to point out is with condos, it is way different because most of the time the HOA dues are going to cover most of your utilities except for electricity. I've never seen them cover electricity. And a lot of times they'll even cover your cable and internet. So you do have to consider that in your numbers.
Nailed that.
Agreed.
A lot of people get freaked out over condo dues, and I have two of them, and that's exactly the way it is. Everything is covered in my HOA dues except for electric. And ours are just little one bedrooms, and the electric's pretty cheap, to be honest. In the peak of summer, it's like $200, and in the winter, it's like $80. So it's and then like I said, everything's there: sewer, water, electric, cable, and internet are all included in the dues.
So Avery, I have a property, sounds pretty close to where their condos are in the West Beach part of Gulf Shores, and it was new construction that I built in early 2021, late 2020 into early 2021. And I think you can turn gas into an asset in that market. I've done that. The majority of people seem to have electric heaters in their pools. I did put in a pool, and I spent about $4,000 to pull the gas line down West Beach, almost 2,000 feet to my property so I could put in a gas heater. The only way it benefits is if you market that as an amenity, though. So in January, February, it's typically breezy, windy. That cools down the water temperature. When it's in the 50s and 60s, it's impossible for these decent sized pools with electric heaters to get up to 85 to 90 degrees. They kind of top out around 77 to 82, depending on pool size. So I spent the extra money for a gas heater. I've leveraged that, and that has been a huge benefactor for me for shoulder season and winter revenue and sustaining, higher ADRs, just FYI. But the end, I charge $50 a day for heating with my gas heater. Maybe cost me about $17 to $18 per day to keep it heated. So it's actually a profit center.
Totally agree with that. We did that on our place down the road in Destin, and it made a huge difference. And a lot of people are like, oh man, the beach, you don't need a heated pool. You do. This is not South Florida.
Yeah. You absolutely do. And exactly what Bill said, your winter guest almost expect it. I mean, if you say heated pool, it cannot be 75 degrees. It's got to be warm.
And you guys are in condos. That's a problem with cottages and condos. The ones that don't have heated pools, it's tougher to book. So I look at that added expense. My first investment into West Beach actually was on the East Beach side, and it was into East Point Cottages when Shaul, if you guys know who Shaul is down there, who owns everything, right? When he sold those, and the fundamental problem is we had 12 units. They were all great. Everything was fantastic, but literally the new HOA that was homeowner owned would not approve the $5,000 to put in a gas heater. There was no pool heater. So really the pool becomes almost insignificant as a selling point. So those are some expenses that I think people should look at when they're acquiring a property, whether it's single family home, whether it's a cottage. Cottages are the big thing in Gulf Shores right now, right? They're being overdeveloped in my opinion, but those added expenses can give you a marketing separator and increase your ADR.
Absolutely. So that's how to turn gas into an asset, guys, if you have it. So now we can get into the 800-pound gorilla if you guys want to. So some of the things that are more expensive in this market. Let's talk about insurance, because that's the big one along the Gulf Coast in general right now. We're at the end of July 2023. If you guys are listening sometime off in the future, maybe it won't be an issue anymore, but it's something to think about right now if you're buying in this market. So who wants to start talking about insurance?
I don't want to talk about it. It's too damn expensive.
I'll say, it does vary. And, we're sitting here, like you said, 2023, and we're a couple years post Hurricane Sally, which was a big one for us, and there was a lot of damage done, and I was the recipient of some of that. But you just have to factor it in and pay attention to it and do your diligence up front. Again, I'm going to talk about condos a little bit because that's what I have. But if you're buying a condo, understand how that's handled, because there's two insurances. Really, you have your own personal insurance that is on your cube of whatever the condo is in that building. But then there's an insurance plan that's the master plan on the entire building, and the HOA will manage that. And when you're going into buying a condo, you need to understand how they're handling insurance increases, because they do happen. Usually they do one of two things. They'll either just roll it into the dues, and the dues will be what they are, and that includes the master plan insurance, or they'll create an assessment for the insurance. And I hate to say it, but sometimes the assessment kind of hides the cost a little bit when you're buying, and a lot of people don't catch that. So ours actually has made the election to roll it into the dues. Some HOAs don't like to do that because it makes the dues look higher versus having it separate and being an assessment for the increase. But you can start to get assessment tacked on top of assessment. So just understand when you're buying how the insurance is handled, and if there are any assessments, and how far out they go, and what they're covering, and things like that. So it's just understanding it. It is what it is. You can't really change it a whole lot. I mean, you can shop around for insurance, but you want to make sure you're covered correctly. So it's a double-edged sword there.
And the other thing for new buyers is to, get copies of the annual meeting minutes and ask questions of how the HOA is funding that insurance policy. Are they paying cash for that, or are they financing? I'm sure you've heard the horror stories of some HOAs and property management companies that have financed, gotten upside down. Then the new buyers have to come in and have another assessment to be able to buy out the previous policy, or they're rolling that in to the new policy, which you're going to pay for in the future.
Do you think that buying a condo is an opportunity to maybe save some money on insurance? Is insurance less because you're only insuring what's inside the condo, whereas the exterior is covered in your condo association? Or do you think it all kind of evens out because you are paying HOA dues plus your insurance on the inside?
I personally feel like it drastically depends on the HOA and how well the HOA is managed. A well-managed HOA can take not only some of the costs, it can be a little bit beneficial on the cost, but more so than that, in the event of an event, a well-managed HOA helps spread the burden of taking care of the repairs a bit. Our HOA was fantastic during Sally, I got to say, and we were one of the first buildings back up and live, but it took a lot of teamwork and effort to get that building back up and going and repaired and everything. So
I know that my biggest expense at the beach on an annual basis, Avery, is insurance in the single family home space.
Yep.
My largest property there in West Beach, it's a 6.4. I've got a pool. It's tier 2. The lots are open in front of me. So it's almost beachfront. My renewal is in 2 months. I'm already working on it. I was at $12,800 over the last year. I'm looking at somewhere between $19,000 to $23,000. That's cash as an expense, right? And so those are things that come with doing single family homes. We don't have assessments and stuff like that, but I think a lot of people look at the entire panhandle, and I think it's being impacted not only still the aftermath by Sally, but also what's happening, how much harder it's becoming to get insurance in Florida is trickling over into Alabama. And I think that needs to be something that's factored into your pro forma when you're looking to do an investment or new construction anywhere, basically from St. Joe all the way to Dauphin Island.
We actually just had a minor, not opposite, but our insurance just got switched this year as well. And it's just coming up for renewal here in about 2 months. And ours actually mildly went down. So this is the complete other side of the spectrum of what Bill's property. It couldn't be more opposite. They're 1 bedroom, 1 bath condos, or 1 bedroom, 1.5 bath condos. And our insurance on I call it the box insurance. There's a better name for it, but our insurance on our unit just went from $2,500 a year down to like $2,200 or $2,300 a year. There is a real mild decrease, but it was a decrease. And our building as a whole went up a little bit, and it ended up, the difference in our HOA, it went from like $355 a month to I think like right at $400 or $408 or something like. It's like $50 a month that went up on the building. So.
So do you think, as a new buyer who hasn't bought anything yet, what are some ways, maybe some certain types of properties they can buy in terms of age or gold fortified construction? It's called gold fortified, right, Jonathan? I know it's okay. I keep wanting to call it like solid gold or something. So what are some ways that you can choose a property that might be a little bit less on that insurance without necessarily sacrificing the other things that might be great about it, like location or amenities, things like that?
Well, and these are all great points. From what I'm seeing now, it really, condos can be some of the best savings for insurance if, like we were just discussing, if the HOAs run well, if they haven't filed some major claims, if the age of certain components are newer. If you're wanting the most clear answer without having to do a lot of due diligence, which you do really have to with condos, then the cottage style new gold fortified, new construction are probably going to be your lowest insurance options. For a lot of clients that I've closed recently, you're seeing under, as of right now, under 4,500 for your flood and your homeowner's insurance. And these are not in they're not in COBRA zones or nothing like that, which is a whole different thing to talk about. But those are going to be probably your lowest insurance. I'm not saying they're the highest grossing properties or anything, but just insurance, the gold fortified cottages are probably your best bet for lowest insurance.
So no question. I think if you go down the checklist, you mentioned it, John, COBRA, non-COBRA, know your flood zones. And that's something that your agents like you guys, by having somebody like STS agents that specialize in short-term rentals, critical from a knowledge standpoint. COBRA, non-COBRA, gold fortified, age of the home. I mean, trying to get like a beachfront that was built in the 60s or 70s, insured or even tier 2 out in Fort Morgan these days, it's probably going to be double, maybe triple what that same house would be in West Beach if it's gold fortified. Impact windows, non-impact windows, all of these things that the first time buyer, that's if you're not aware of all of this, this is where your agent should be educating you. And most don't understand, all of those things, and get your quotes. So there's this whole thing that I believe in is contract to close. Your insurance should be part of your due diligence, not as a contingency, but that should be like one of the first things that I would be looking at once I go under contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. And exactly what they're talking about on single family carries over into condos. I mean, understand like what your building has for doors and windows. That is a massive thing. Again, ours, when we did the rebuild, we all, voted to, we spent extra money putting in way better doors and windows and stuff on the building to help with all that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Just to say that's a really good point that Bill made. It is during your 10 business days of due diligence. Of course, this is a negotiation, but built standard in the contract is a 10 business days. The inspection is just one of many things, but the insurance quotes, even though you don't have to have them during that time, that's one of the first things I always tell my clients to get is multiple insurance quotes to see what they're really up against, because you may be projecting something, but it could be completely different than what you're thinking.
And if you guys happen to want to buy something on Dauphin Island, I don't necessarily really recommend that, but if you do, because things are cheaper over there, reason 1 million not to buy one of those houses that you can fish off the front deck that already have the waves in the front
or
of them.
Or the back deck.
Like, yeah.
I almost did.
There's no way you're going to get insurance on that. Like there is no way you're going to get insurance on that. Not that you shouldn't be buying those anyway, because they will float off into the ocean at some point, which is why you can't get insurance. But anyway, in case anyone was wondering.
One thing on insurance that we talked about insurance and maybe in a negative light, but make sure you are appropriately insured. Just because it's the cheapest insurance doesn't mean it's the right insurance. You need to have a good insurance agent to make sure you're properly insured for whatever circumstances might arise.
Yeah.
Ethan,
totally
that kind of just jogs my memory, and something that, I had a mastermind member in Gatlinburg 2 years ago, I think it was, Avery, when the fires hit and he lost a property. One of the smartest guys, former executive at Bridgestone here in Nashville. And he'd had the house or the cabin for 3 years, and he wasn't insured enough on the dwelling cost for rebuilding. And so he ended up having about $190,000 gap. So specifically when you've gone through 1 or 2 renewals, especially now as building costs have skyrocketed, and if your insurance agency is only giving you $225 a foot to rebuild, but you talk to the local builders and it's $300, sometimes $400, even $500, depending on market, you need to reshop that and try to get that up. Because if you go through a Sally, you go through a fire, you go through something like that, a lot of you probably aren't going to have enough cash to be able to gap a $200,000 disparity on dwelling coverage.
Yep. Especially in the really high appreciation that we've seen in the past few years, you definitely want to make sure of that. During those last fires, I had the thought like, oh, insurance will cover this, because it got pretty close to one of ours. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute, we haven't updated that. Luckily, it was like the smallest, cheapest one we had and nothing happened to it. But I remember thinking, oh, crap, great.
There was
so
a rush of that in the Smokies when those fires hit. I live right across the street from where they were, and we sat there and watched cabins burn every day. It was horrible. And but there was a ton of exactly what Bill was talking about that happened, and it's very unfortunate when people see people go through that. So,
and you think about it, that one, your insurance rates go up, so that's going to be an added expense. But that's why companies like Proper, it's getting harder and harder for them to write into those markets.
Yeah.
we actually had a closing scheduled that was going on during the fire, and we literally got to the table, and insurance agent called and said, "We can't do this today," because they'd actually stopped insuring until the fires went out. So,
wow.
We had a listing that was under contract. It was going to close in like a week that had an $800,000 gap burned down.
yeah, I had a client that was a buyer that lost one. He was like a week from closing, and it burnt down. So
Oof.
it was
Yeah,
horrible.
that was painful. Anyway, all right, other stuff related to this market. So let's talk about, we've talked about HOA fees. So when we're hiring a cleaner here, what are you guys seeing for the cost of cleaners per turn and what they cover? So are you having to provide linens and towels? Are they doing that? Or are you providing the consumables and paper products, or do they do that? Let's go through that whole thing.
I'll start, I guess. I'm probably a little bit different than most, but I provide everything except for cleaning products. I provide consumables, I provide sheets, I provide towels, everything, because I want control over it, because I'm in that super property space. I think the norm is, having the cleaners provide all of those things. But I'm just kind of a control freak, and I want to control the quality and, the thread counts and, all that stuff on my own. I'm paying about $75 to $100, per room as it scales up. So a 3-bedroom, I typically pay about $300. As I get up to 6 or 7 bedrooms, it does come down because of the scales of economy, and that's when it drops down to like that $75 range. So on the high end, I have a 7-bedroom that I'm paying $600 a clean for. And on the low end, I have a 2-bedroom that I'm paying $200 a clean for.
On our end, we have 2-bedroom. It's $195 a clean. They provide all the linens, the sheets, pillowcases, all the bath. What am I after here? The towels and rags. They provide all that. So $195 a clean. There is no linen fee. Sometimes I know our one in the Smokies has a linen fee that we pay quarterly. This one's just $195 a turn for us, and it's been good. We've been happy with that.
Yeah, on the condos, just kind of, if you want to talk about general, I've been seeing around 15 cents a square foot. I'm thinking about that right. It's about $110 ish for like a 700-800 square foot thing. And it varies on the linens. It's kind of like you can almost choose based on your cleaner. Some cleaners will offer both. Some cleaners only do it one way or the other. And there's I'll say like almost a flood of cleaners around those buildings. They're pretty easy to find, and there's lots of them, and they all do it a little bit different. So it's a little bit of a personal preference, honestly, I think.
On Tim's note, I mean, I've gotten different quotes from cleaners that have on the same property that have been pretty drastically different, but it's about what they provide. And of course, if you got pet friendly, which mine are in Fort Morgan are pet friendly, that's going to be an additional charge as well.
All right. Yeah. And I think you kind of almost have to go pet friendly you don't have to, but it's a really good opportunity to, because of the dog friendly beaches down there. So, okay. Now let's talk about, we'll hit internet first. That's a boring one. Then I've got a bigger topic after that. So can you get typical high-speed internet basically everywhere here, or is there anywhere that you have to fill in some gaps, like with hotspots or satellite internet or anything like that?
Pretty much you can get fiber anywhere you want in the West Beach area, and most of the places out in Fort Morgan, you can get access to that as well via Mediacom. I think I can't remember, there's like 2 others, John, you might know.
Brightspeed's one. That's what we have, Brightspeed.
Yeah.
Right. And they just ran Secure Vision. There's a few different options. There are a few areas that are kind of spotty. I did have a client who had to get Starlink, which is now an option in this area. The RV park situation for me is kind of unique. So we had to pay to run fiber out, which wasn't cheap, but that's a rare occasion. Most areas will have access to high speed. fiber.
Here's the thing that people need to understand. It's the deep South. And if somebody can't catch the Auburn, Alabama game or UT, Alabama or Georgia, whoever, I mean, SEC football is a big freaking deal down there. So you better have the opportunity for your guests to be able to watch football. That's the only reason that I have cable. Like even at my number one property, I have cable going to one television. And it's in the family room. Everything else is just all OTA, over the air smart TV stuff. But some people will not book. And if they do stay and they're fans and they can't watch the game, they're going to be pissed and you're going to get a negative review.
Yes. SEC football is life down here. Very good call out, because people do get pissed off if they can't watch their football, which my team is entering the SEC next year, but we won't get into that yet. I'll take one more year of not having. Actually, I think that will be fun, because then I'll have a dog in that fight. So anyway,
I didn't know Belmont had a football team.
No, I went to Masters there, University of Texas.
I know, I'm messing with you.
Does Belmont have? They don't have football, right?
They do not.
All right. So next thing, this is maintenance, but also kind of falls into the CapEx. So anything maintenance specific that we need to watch out for and what that kind of costs. We talked about this a little bit with corrosion and salt air. You have to replace metal things more often. Anything else before we move on to the cost to do amenities, which I think is what everyone's waiting to hear, because that's the fun stuff, right?
One thing that rolls into amenities is, and it's also a maintenance item, is making sure your beach furniture stays really nice. We love using the polywood type stuff that's nicer and brighter and all that. But even anything that's getting hit by salt water requires some level of maintenance, and you don't want that stuff looking dumpy. I mean, that is first impression, and people use it every day, and that's just guest experience stuff. You want to make sure they have nice furniture outside. And then, for us, outside of that, maintenance stuff is just, like you said, anything metal. Air conditioners, outside units of air conditioners get corrosion and things like that. So your door locks.
Door locks are a big one. A lot of people are using Schlagen codes. And when you use a Schlagen code, I would highly recommend understanding the warranty. You can submit that back if you have any moisture issues within the first 12 months. But also you can buy these moisture packets off of Amazon to put inside the battery. Holding area, whatever it's called, and it'll keep the moisture out to extend the life of your Schlagen code locks. I think, Tim, a lot of people buy wood tables and stuff like that. They're going to get molded. You're going to have to, refinish them every year. Avery, you mentioned CapEx. Make the investment if you're a new investor in Polywood. You can buy the best wood table, chairs, weave, whatever. But that's going to get freaking nasty within about probably 4 to 5 months. Same with bikes. If you're going to invest in, that's an amenity. We'll talk about that in a second. The HVAC is a huge deal, but in maintenance, one thing for me is someone that tries to elevate, everything to super properties. I spend about $60 to $75 a month during peak season per property for my handyman to come in and do what I call the 48 inches and down painting. At every turn, he spends 15 to 20 minutes, because we painted all of our walls flat. If there is an eggshell or a semi-gloss or whatever, we'll immediately come in, sand them down, paint them into flat, so he can walk through literally with touch up. He's armed with all of our paint and just touch everything up. No magic eraser. You don't have to paint the entire wall, just little touch ups everywhere. So our houses look perfect. And that's one of the things that helps us from an investment standpoint. Obviously, if I ever want to sell, it's in great condition. But when our guests walk in, it looks like my brand new construction at every house that I co-host and also that I own on that 48 inches. And you will never, I shouldn't say never ever, but almost never will you ever see a bag scuff, whether it's on a wall or it's on a trim piece. The other thing that I would recommend having your handyman or a contractor do is do 1x2s on the corners of your drywall corners on all high traffic areas. That's going to save you a lot of ongoing maintenance, because people just, especially kids, walk around with their bags and they're slinging them around on accident. They're just unaware, and it hits the corners, and then, it gets down to the metal piece, and you kind of have to redo the drywall. So I think having 1x2s, and then if you really want to sustain that high level, literally we touch up every turn during the summer at every property. Small investment from a maintenance side.
Hey, Bill, I got a question on that same note, and this is something we're experimenting with still, but exterior doors. Do you have a paint you love for exterior doors? We've actually shifted to putting stainless steel on the bottom of them. They just take a bigger beating because
you mean like a kick plate?
Yeah, a kick plate, and then also just the paint. Just because of it being exterior, it seems like the door just takes a bigger beating than the rest of it.
Yeah, you're right. And like a lot of the houses now, you have like the little walkway that goes up inside, and we do the same thing with the walls there as well. We don't use flat exteriorly. I don't know sure, my wife uses Sherwin-Williams everywhere as a designer. Yeah. It is some type of satin finish, I believe, in Sherwin-Williams. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is on the code, though, unfortunately.
We're experimenting with an epoxy paint on the exterior doors, but I don't have enough time on it yet to know. So right. I'm just curious if you got anything on that. So
yeah, I mean, like most of our properties only have 2 exterior doors, and that kind of falls into that same 48 inches and down. He will come and repaint those as well. Right. I think that, you mentioned kind of the beach furniture, which gets trash because of the salt air and the sea. Same with lights. A lot of people put in metal lights. We do all plastic, lights to where they don't corrode and do that type of stuff. But I think the look of your pillars, the look of the front door, the look of the walkway, the entryway, that sets first impression. So even if you have an average property, but that looks just fucking nails when somebody walks in, like it's brand new, it's going to set the tone, for their their feeling when they walk in and those expectations.
Okay. So I think now that we've gone on some maintenance things, anything else related specifically to maintenance before we move on to the costs of adding amenities? All right. So what are some amenities that add income? I'm not talking about adding value to, to the appreciation, to the equity of the home. I'm talking about income. So I'll start. Biggest one is going to be a private pool, in my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion on that. I think you're in better shape buying a property that doesn't have a pool and adding it in terms of how much that actually costs than buying a property that already has a pool. But what are we looking at in costs to either add, or just if there's an existing pool, just keep that running?
I've done 3 pools down there in the last 2 years. My average is around $55,000. That's with a gas heater, Hayward 450,000 BTU, and $1,500 for I can't remember the name of it, but the Wi-Fi management, to where I can manage everything remotely. Running the date on that with Kenny from STR Insights, the pool, and people can have their opinion, Avery, but nobody can debate you on that, because the data shows that you should be able to get a 24-month or lower return on investment on that $50,000 to $60,000 investment. But the pool's got to have a heater, so you can't put just a pool in without a heater. At bare minimum, put in an electric or upgrade to the gas heater. The pool 100%. Interestingly, in the number one, and I'm going to quote Kenny's data here. We just did a podcast about this. Kayaks are the number one revenue driver based on cost to implement as an amenity in Fort Morgan. Not the same in West Beach. And you would think that it was pets, like you said. I thought it was pets. I argued with Kenny about it. And buying 2 kayaks and putting that onto a 2 to a 6 bedroom property in Fort Morgan will add more revenue than being pet friendly in Fort Morgan, believe it or not. So one of the things is really do what you teach, Avery, is you look at the enemy method. Use the enemy method. Look at what your competitors are doing, what amenities they have to go and drop in. I just spent $12,000 to add cabanas on the back of my pool. I'd planned on doing that, so I already had an extra concrete poured back there. But when I looked up and down between West Beach and West Lagoon, nobody has shade. And when you see these people with pop-up tents and they're zip tying them to the rails and their beach, umbrellas that are blown over and don't give them any shade, it's not going to add direct value. I don't believe I can charge more because I'm already at the top price point, but I believe it gives me marketing capability that it's going to increase my occupancy level at my highest point. So I get an indirect return on investment.
All right. The cabanas it does sound cool because it looks very like Vegas and sharp, like in the photos, I think. And then obviously, aside from just the aesthetics of it, it would be nice to have some shade sometimes when you're at the pool. So
especially for you, right? You're a mom with kids yes. And you can only lather them up with so much sunscreen. Sometimes they need to cool down and get in some shade, right? So I think if you think about those things, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but I think about my ideal buyer and Avery Carl, a mom who is a value-based buyer, very discerning traveler, that you would be right in my demo, right? You're not looking for the $200 cheap property. You're going to look for something nice for you and your family. So how am I going to market to Avery specifically? You are exactly why I put those cabanas in it. When me and my family went down there, I never went under them one time. But you know what? My girls were in there. That's where the sunscreen's being, distributed. That's where the phones are sitting. So think about that ideal buyer and before you put in your amenities.
Absolutely. So we got pool, we got cabanas, we got kayaks. What about paddle boards? Have we looked at anything separating kayaks and paddle boards? They're kind of similar, I guess.
They're pretty much the same. Bikes, if you're in the West Beach area, are a pretty big one. In Fort Morgan, unless you're in Morgantown or Kiva or someplace to where you can actually ride around in the neighborhood. But bikes are a big one in Kiva, Fort Morgan. Golf carts. I think I was probably one of the first people to have a golf cart in Fort Morgan years ago. Golf carts are illegal unless they're street legal, in the city of Gulf Shores. But I think that the other thing is, honestly, I believe that I have no data to back this up, but I'm considering putting in a hot tub in my Fort Morgan property because I don't have enough room between the property and my property line going to the beach to put in a pool, because I think that will help me in the shoulder season. I don't think anybody would want to be in a hot tub down there right now. It's so damn hot. But I think a $10,000 and $12,000 investment's worth the risk. For me, I think I could definitely get 2 or 3 more bookings to be able to pay for that in the first 12 months.
Awesome. Do they have the golf cart rental places there, or you pretty much have to own your own?
There's a few. There's Island Golf Carts and a couple of others that are around there, but it's a small segment. It's really just that kind of those communities in Fort Morgan that are renting them. I don't know about you guys that own in the city, but I seem to get 5 to 10 requests, for golf carts on an annual basis across my portfolio. They're just not legal because none of the rental carts, at least that I'm aware of, are street legal.
Right. And you'll see some places like the Rookery and where people have golf carts that live there. But if you think about it from a guest that's trying to cross Fort Morgan, I wouldn't feel comfortable having one there for liability reasons. People can shoot right across Fort Morgan, but people are going 75 miles an hour down that road. So like Bill's saying, Morgantown, Martinique on the Gulf, some of these communities that are in Fort Morgan, south of Fort Morgan Road, those are really the only places I would ride. Now in Orange Beach and some of the residential sides and areas by the wharf, you can ride golf carts. They are expanding the golf cart paths there, but there's not going to be too many short-term rentals that'll be able to utilize that.
Interesting. Good to know, because I think a lot of people see Beach Market and they just think, oh, golf carts. But you've got to know where you can use them and where you can't. What
about the e-bikes, Jonathan? I know you and I have talked about that a little bit. I know that's getting to be more of a thing. You seeing that a lot?
Well, I personally love e-bikes, especially getting on the Gulf State Park, because you can access a lot of cool places on the Gulf State Park, and you can go all the way to the beach, and there's some restaurants. So if you're on the Gulf State Park, those are awesome, and you can get even into Fort Morgan a little bit, but it does cut off. They're expanding the bike paths as well to where you can go all the way to the Fort Morgan Pier and then get into this Gulf State Park. So eventually, over the next couple of years, it's going to be even more bike friendly, and I'm pumped about it. But as of right now, you are somewhat limited. But if you're on the Gulf State Park, it's amazing.
But correct me if I'm
just
wrong.
saying, there's zero chance I'm riding a bike on, in Fort Morgan on that highway. Those people are crazy.
I'm with you there.
There's zero chance I'm riding around. I'm not riding around with alligators and stuff, but that's what Jonathan likes to do. He likes to go hang out with those alligators and the snakes in the park. But they are legal some places where golf carts aren't, though, right?
Yes. Well, there are a lot of places you can go with those, and there's even bike paths like on Perdido Boulevard. Right. You can go a lot of places on e-bikes for sure.
Cool. All right. Any other amenities that are worth calling out that we might need to talk about how much they cost in order to get started with a rental here?
Some basic stuff. If you're close to the beach, having just basic, we've talked about this in other ones, but chairs, towels, umbrellas, and a wagon, some of the basics, if you have some basic beach toys and stuff like that, that's a pretty small investment, for $1,000, $1,500, you can get all of it, or maybe a little bit more than that, but somewhere around there. It depends on the size of your property and how much stuff you're buying, I guess. But that is a biggie.
Spend the money for the balloon tires for your guests on the cart.
Otherwise, it's too hard to pull through the sand.
Yeah, it is, in my opinion. I mean, I think I'm going to go back to your enemy method, Avery. I think really what I would suggest for people from a marketing perspective and a hospitality perspective is look at what your competition, not only at your level, but at least one level above you, and either what they have or what they don't have, and just make a list. I mean, I have a VA do research on that every week for me to where I can see. And I mean, it could be a coffee bar, it could be video games. I actually put video games in my properties down at the beach. They have to have something to do when it rains, and it does rain down there once in a while. And then that helps me, pull on the kids to tell mom, I want to go there because they have video games or whatever that is. So just think about what the competition does not have, or look at their positive reviews and see what guests love about their property. And when they talk about amenities, to make decisions on additions.
Totally agree with that. Anything else? We're getting to the end of time here. Any other amenities / expenses that the listeners could benefit from hearing about that we haven't talked about yet?
I think one thing just from ADR and a price point is the tax difference between being in the city of Gulf Shores versus being in Fort Morgan in the county. I think 10% difference, right, John? I think it's 6% versus 16%. Is that right?
I think it's 7% versus 15. And it's going up to 16. But actually,
September, right, is when it goes up to 16.
Right, September. That's right.
So you just need to think about those standpoints, especially when you're looking at numbers. So if you're looking to purchase and you're using AirDNA, STR Insights, Rabu, Matchvisor, whatever you're using to run your performas, understand that you're going to pay tax on that gross revenue, and it's going to be different in the city than it is in the county.
Very good point.
Another thing I want to mention that you think that it's from experience. So if you buy in late in the season, you have to carry your cost through the off season. So just make sure that you're budgeting correctly, or if you're buying late and you have those funds set aside for those expenses that come through.
Yeah. Well, let's real quick break out the taxes between what is local, what state, hotel occupancy, all those words. What are we paying in this market? Just break that out for me.
Well, we were talking about the lodging and occupancy. So it's 9% in the, I'm trying to think of the actual breakdown. It's 9% for the county, 2% for 6% for the county. I'd have to look back at the breakdown. I can't remember off the top of my head. Do you know, Bill?
I don't know the breakdown. I think it's 7% total in Fort Morgan in the county, and it's 15% going to 16% next month if you're in the city of Gulf Shores. But I don't know exactly what the breakdown is.
Yeah, I just know the total too. So.
All right. Well, that helps. So anything else in terms of expenses that the folks need to hear? No. All right. Silence.
You covered it all.
Long pause. Long pause.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for being here. Thanks for your time and the knowledge you're contributing. And if you guys want to know more about this market, you can feel free to reach out to Jonathan at theshorttermshop.com, or you can reach out to agents at theshorttermshop.com. We've got a Facebook group, same title as my book, called Short Term Rental, Long Term Wealth. You can come join us there if you want to learn more. And we look forward to hearing from you guys. Thanks so much for being here, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
See ya.